So we're live. My name is Carlos Miguel Prieto, and I'm music director of the Louisiana Philharmonic in New Orleans. And this is Happy Hour with the Louisiana Philharmonic. And I am extremely excited because I'm joined by three fabulous musicians. And the reason why I'm so excited is because ever since we started these happy hours, one of my topics of conversation with every single LPO musician who has been on this is, do you know how to improvise? And now I am joined by three masters in the art of improvisation. So in reality, whether you consider yourselves masters or not, that doesn't matter. I consider you masters. So I want to say hi to each one of you one by one. Welcome, Doreen. How are you?
Fine, Carlos. How are you?
Where are you?
I am across the river in Hardin.
And Aurora, Nealand, how are you? This is such an honor to have you on our program.
Well, thank you for having me. I am good-ish is the line I have been using. I'm a big fan of the LPO, so I'm very excited to be on this side of the podium, looking face to virtual face with you. Yeah.
Well, welcome. And Dave Anderson, our principal bass and one of our most active musicians in every single thing he does. Hello, Dave.
Hello. It's good to see you guys, and an honor to do this with you. And I look forward to it always. It's a lot of fun, although it's been a very tough time for all of us, all the musicians and everything, but we're getting through it. You know, looking forward to somehow having things work out.
One of the things I do is I actually communicate to you some of the comments. And the first comment to come is from Drew Blaylock, and the comment is DERF.
Yeah,
which only Dave understands, and I do after several years with working with Dave and the LPO. So one thing, I really don't want the emphasis of the program of this hour necessarily to be this this situation we're living through, but I do want to start by addressing it directly and just asking you, how have you been able to deal with this tremendous uncertainty and this tremendous, just difficult situation, Doreen?
Well, I mean, I'm a prayer, you know, and God's gotten us through a lot more than, a lot tougher stuff than this. And even some of those things, we were alone. Here, everybody's suffering. You know, everybody's experiencing that. When you go through things alone, people listen to you, but they don't really, you know, understand. Whereas now, you know, you talk about certain things and everybody's like, yeah, oh yeah. So, you know, even though there's no end time, I mean, I think this is going to go on much longer than a lot of people think. But, you know, I've been saving and, you know, praying and, you know, just trying to practice. I can't do it every day. I don't know why. I could play every day when I was working, but it, you know, some things come in front of practicing, and so I don't get to practice every day. But when I practice hard, and been doing a lot of other things around the house and stuff like that. So, you know, trying to stay busy, trying to stay active, trying to keep my chops, trying to, you know, stay focused mentally, and it's working. You know, I mean, so thank God I'm good.
Aurora.
I'm trying to think. What was the question again?
Well,
How?
the question is how have you dealt with this this period of time, this uncertainty?
Sure. Yeah. I found in myself there's definitely waves. Well, there's certainly a lot of waves of emotion and uncertainty, and as an artist, you know, there's a piece of it which is like, oh, we've been building so much momentum for myself in these like larger projects that have now, things that you may have been working on for years that have sort of evaporated, and really trying to see like what is the opportunity that, as terrifying as the circumstances are that have created this, what is the opportunity that is here for this time right now? So for myself, I've really been trying to, you know, I think for the first couple of weeks, I was like trying really hard to continue to like produce or like write a composition every day and have a practice schedule. And similar to Doreen, I found it, there was a point where I was sort of like, it feels hollow to be practicing. I'm not sure what I'm practicing for, which is then you come up against your own walls and like your own relationship to music and your own relationship to art of like, why do you do, like, what are any of us doing? Why do you do what you do? And for myself, the thing that has felt good for right now for me to land on is honestly like a lesson that improvisation, I have learned from improvisation, which is like the pre-planning is not always the most useful thing for the present moment experience. And I've been trying to use this time to like become a beginner again. So I have been working on things that I'm not good at, and that as an adult who is supposed to be fully formed, I probably wouldn't have time to do in a consistent way. Like I've been playing a lot of classical piano, which I'm never going to be a concert pianist. I'm never going to perform in front of people, but just having the time to do that. Or I've been you know, have a weird synthesizer band that I've been working on. So I don't know. Or I've been pickling, you know, gardening and like thinking about these kind of things that as adults, we don't often give ourselves the permission to become beginners again, who are not good at something, and really letting yourself be in that beginner mindset. Because I think we're in this stage for quite a while, similar to what Doreen said, of it's a long stretch, and I don't know really what is, you know, going back to normal or what will be recovered out of this. So
not gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Dave.
Oh, well, it's been very difficult, but I'm motivated. You know, I'm doing my concerto with the LPO in October, scheduled for, and I'm not sure if we're going to do it or if we're going to do a chamber version of it, or it's going to be delayed or something like that. But it motivated me, so I'm practicing a lot. And even though I wrote the piece, it's hard for me to play it. I wrote it 20 years ago, and you know, it was actually for another great bass player, and so it's a real challenge for me, and just missing the performing that we do, and you know, just a lot of woodshedding. I'm doing some writing too. I was very lucky that last Thursday, I got to do a gig with my trio, which was a virtual gig. It was at the Sidebar next to the courthouse over in that area, but it was total improv, free, what we call it. We made everything up. There was no set list or anything like that. It's just it's with Dave Beasley, incredible pedal steel and guitarist, and Tom Shute, great drummer, and me, and it was fantastic. It just felt so good to be able to do that, and it was broadcast, you know, on the web, and you know, it was so enjoyable to be able to do that. And my wife, a fantastic harpist, and so we've been doing I've written a lot of bass and harp stuff. That's why we got married. So, we've done a lot of playing, and it's really it's been very difficult, unsure about what's going to happen, but I'm trying to remain positive. Planning on composition is something I always have a hard. When I say, okay, from this hour to this hour, I'm going to work on a piece or something, and I'll sit there and stare at the paper or the computer. Whereas if all of a sudden I get an idea and boom, I sit down, start working on it. Next thing I know, it's like 4 a.m. or something, and all sense of time has been gone. So, and which is kind of cool because now I can do that, for instance. And worried about. I mean, one of the saddest things for me was the loss of Ellis Marcelli. We had become good friends. My father also good friends with him, and we had the gala coming up where actually we had talked. We were going to play a couple of tunes, arrangements, and I was really looking forward to it and everything. And then when I heard he passed away, I just, it was so gut wrenching. I mean, he's been such a mentor and icon of jazz here in New Orleans, and his ties to classical music that he forced his kids to do. And back when I was first here, and when I first joined the LPO, he was sending me students over from UNO to learn classical technique and how to use a bow, stuff like that. And right away, I mean, just an amazing musician. And it was just so sad to lose him and many other people too. This has just been horrible. And, I just have hope for the future. All I can sort of live on.
You all three touched upon one thing which to me is kind of the kind of the crux of the matter is finally the big question is, what are we here for? Why are we musicians? Whether we are whatever kind of musicians or wherever we perform, I think this situation is putting us all in the position of going back to square one and asking ourselves why. That's at least that's what I ask myself. Why do I do what I do? And is it for whatever reason it is, this situation has forced me to rethink everything I do and to hopefully in the future shape it in a way that impacts the life of people one-on-one. And this idea of one-on-one is, to me, maybe the crux of the matter, because right now we can't perform for the audiences that the LPO performs for that make economic sense. But we can all make a difference one-on-one. In other words, we will have to find, and I think we will find, ways to work with each other, just the four of us who are right here, to make a difference to small groups of people. And that is what gets me going, because this idea of one-on-one is a completely different way of thinking. And I think it's a different way of organizing one's mind. And finally, I think there's a way out. Because if you think about the fact that, well, Doreen, you're used to playing and lots of people are walking by and listen to you. But, you can probably, and you probably are already or may be doing that, reaching all those people in a different way. So is that something that you've been doing? Do you play for people on Zoom? Have you been doing anything like that?
Yeah, that's the only reason I was able to do this. Because I had never even heard of Zoom before all of this COVID stuff. And people, fans were actually saying, hey, when are you going to Zoom? When are you going to Zoom? And I'm like, what the heck is Zoom? I didn't know what it was. So, plenty of them helped me and showed me. And my cousin in California, he's a cameraman for Fox. He's been helping me get my sounds together because I'm fortunate enough, blessed enough to have my family. My daughter plays the drums and my husband plays the tuba. So we get in this room right here and we turn on the phones and we start to play and we record it. And, we take a song or two and we put it out there on Facebook or on YouTube, and people, they love it and everything. But the sound is kind of crazy because the phones, they kind of put everything together. And since I'm very high, she's very percussive, he's very low, it doesn't always come out very well. So we actually haven't been out. We did a little small something since then, but Mother's Day, we had this big old workup and it just didn't work. It sounded like we were doing like 4 different starting points, and you got to work out the kinks. But yeah, and to tell you the truth, when you do the Facebook, because we do better on Facebook than on YouTube, because YouTube doesn't really let you comment live anymore. But you just you read the comments and what people are saying, and it just moves you. It's almost like playing, out on the street or in the concert hall again, because you're interacting with people. And kind of getting emotional now just thinking about it, because people are so beautiful, and when you're able to give them something that makes them feel good, and they're actually with their words and expressions making you feel good, at least we're still able to express ourselves. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think I'd explode if I couldn't play, because when I play, all of my spirit, my physical, my spiritual, all of that goes into what comes out of my instrument, and out of my mouth when I sing. And, I can't just not do that, even though it's hard to practice, because when you're practicing, you're not performing, you're practicing. And yeah, Aurora, I've opened my method books and started working on etudes and, all of that stuff I used to work on in high school and in college. And surprisingly enough, I'm not whizzing through it.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
like, what the?
Yeah,
And Aurora, since you are so versatile, and so you do so, your projects seem to be really fascinating. And can you tell us, in these times, whether these projects have found a way out through the internet or any other way?
Well, I have not been trying very much to live stream with these projects. For me, I do a lot of different kind of projects because I think that they're just like different facets of expression. For me, I find I can access through different types of music or different approaches or different projects. For me, there's something so beautiful about live performance that for right now, and I think that will shift as the need, as my own personal need needs to shift. I haven't been trying to do a whole lot of live streams because I have been trying to sort of incubate about like what is the next, how can we reimagine the function of art right now, and I'm not sure that my projects from the past are going to really serve right now. And so for me, I think there are amazing. I was going to say, while Doreen was talking, I was thinking about Doreen, I've seen you play many times. there's such like a beautiful thing that happens with music that is rooted in improvisation and in particular this New Orleans music tradition that's rooted in a physical place. It's rooted in a social structure. It's rooted in history. It's rooted in collective improvisation. And so it really can like speak to almost any time and any situation. There's something there for us, you know. I know that like listening to friends performing music that has some sort of structure but also has these improvisational pieces, it can really speak to whatever emotion needs to come out at this time in this current moment, even if those songs and those compositions are from 100 years ago. So that was a very convoluted answer. I'm saying I haven't been doing that much live streaming. I think my brain is in a place of trying to sort of see like what is the reimagining of like how can an orchestra alter or evolve its function in our society, which I think is I often say that man's two greatest inventions are the bicycle and the orchestra for myself. That's what I see as the man's two greatest inventions, because there is something really amazing that, you know, 40 to 60 people are giving themselves over to create something that's larger than themselves and create this sound. And I think this is an interesting time to sort of reimagine the function or how we can serve as artists when we're so limited by distance and technology and space.
That your answer was not convoluted in it. I think it was very, very clear and very powerful, because this, of course, this uncertainty, at least for me, has me asking questions that don't have an answer, and we're so used to kind of planning and answering and trying to like, you know, plan for everything, that this is a hard time for that. I mean, and if you compare the life of an orchestra versus the life of a musician who improvises. In the orchestra, we rehearse. In the orchestra, we just, yes, there is room for expression, but it is more limited than just going wherever you wish. And I think that undoubtedly for me, one of the consequences of this is that the lines between different kind of music will be blurred in a way that they probably should have been blurred for a long time. And I think, Dave, you've probably heard me say this so many times, is that even though a piece of music is written, it's really, you have to make it yours up to the point of really playing around with it as much as you can. So to talk about your concerto that I am dying to do in October, and I'm still going for it, well, you're the composer. You can make it for smaller orchestra. You can make it for orchestra that could be in different positions in wherever we're going to be. So you're the composer. And in a way, I'm also going to be the composer the day that I decide how to do a Beethoven symphony. Because then I'm going to decide where to put the clarinets and the flutes and the oboes and where to place the basses. And we may have to play something like all around the stage or all around the hall. And nobody said that that's not the right way to do it. It's a very hard way to do it, but we are going to learn different ways of expression. Right. And I think that could be very exciting. And it's frustrating because we in the LPO have been planning for this season for 2 years, but in a way it's liberating because we may be put in the position of saying from 1 week to the next, Okay, then what we'll play next week is Mozart clarinet quintet and whatever else, and maybe be joined by one of you guys on stage. And that to me is fascinating, because I've said it ever since we started having meetings since March. The LPO needs to connect with the roots of New Orleans now more than ever, and needs to include every single musician that has something to say, to include them in our concerts, or in whatever kind of way that we will express ourselves. So the question to Dave is, are you willing to really kind of go by the flow and deciding maybe a week or two before how big the orchestra is, or how long your piece is, or whatever, because that's something that only you can decide.
Right. Well, it's funny. Just a word about the piece. I wrote it for Hal Robinson, Philadelphia Orchestra, and they did it with, it's orchestrated just for solo bass, full string section, and harp. And so it was done that way when I wrote it for Hal, and I did it that way here. But just a few years ago, Hal did a cool chamber version of at Curtis. A very small, string, much smaller string section, and it sounded great that way too. It never occurred to me, but it works. So I'm thinking we could do that here, or whatever we need to do. I would be in favor of and help make it work. And I think the idea too with the orchestra is, for instance, what about a brass choir? And they're spread out all over the Orpheum Theater, distance away. But I think that would be great. I love that kind of sound, and other instruments too. Things like that would be fantastic. I think we're going to be able to make it work. I think doing chamber music, I would love to fuse some jazz with it too. I mean, Branford coming down, that'd be great. Something like that. Don't know if it's going to work out or if it has to be delayed. But I think all the genres of music, I've always combined both. And like, for instance, now that we're not working, I'm actually practicing the electric bass, which I never did before. I'd always, I pick it up. It's a toy. I played it since I was a kid. And, but man, I wanted to learn some Victor Wooten stuff, and some other techniques that I kind of knew, but, I wanted to really, all right, I'm going to focus on that and do some of that. And I think a lot of us are doing things like that. I've tried to do live chamber music from different sources on the web, and it never worked. But it does work if I'm playing in a room and we're comfortable with the distance and wearing a mask and all that is fine. And, works pretty well online now. And I think the LPO could do that as well. We do chamber size concerts that could also be up on the web. I think it would be a great way to do it. And, I'd love to do pieces by you guys. If we could work that out and have it be for a chamber size group, that'd be great. I think that might be one of the things that we could really push for. I know that we don't know what the capacity for the Orpheum will be at that point in the fall, and what we'll have to do with the distance between musicians and all that. But I think something could be worked out that way, and I look forward to hearing different styles of music with the musicians.
Well,
be very cool.
one of the things we've been talking about obsessively over the last months in our planning meetings is including musicians like you, Doreen, and Aurora, and anyone else who has something to say and to share. And maybe that's why I've been asking so many musicians from the orchestra, and I think I've interviewed like maybe a quarter of the LPO now. And a few of them do say that they know how to improvise. And for me, this is a very important thing, because I really think that there is something there if we start really interacting with musicians like you. And I'm always motivated by stories where somebody thinks beyond the envelope and makes the life of somebody very far away much better. And music is that. And I really think that with the vitality of New Orleans, with the amount of talent and with the amount of music in that city, there's just absolutely no way that there's no way that we won't find a way. Let me say that that way. It has to do with thinking beyond the envelope. And I have a story that to me is motivating of thinking beyond the envelope, because you all know Amazon.com, okay? And you know that huge company, very profitable company. Yet a dozen years ago, the number 2 guy from Amazon decided that his obsession was not going to be anymore, and perhaps his initial obsession was never to make money or to make a living, but to make people read, and to make people read where they can't read because they don't have access to books. And he focused on one country. He focused on Ghana, where there was all these governmental efforts to provide books for kids, to teach kids to read. And there were efforts by other people. They were sending them their used books. They were sending them new books, you know, the ones that are not sold or whatever. And that was doing zero. So this guy started something called World Reader. It's just like that, World Reader. And the focus of this organization, which is one of the most amazing organizations for child literacy now in Africa, is to have Amazon.com provide Kindles. And kids, you know, they have this electronic device, and then you pair the generosity of the Kindle giver with the individual generosity of funding as many books for one child as that child will read. And that has transformed literacy in Ghana and other countries. That came out of the mind of one person. And that has made a huge difference. And that's what I call thinking beyond the envelope. And orchestras around the world, and especially in the United States, are run in a very square way, unimaginative. We play 2 concerts or 3 concerts per week in a hall with our fabulous audience, which we love. But nobody says that we cannot play 40 concerts per week in 40 different places, because we have 67 musicians plus incredible amount of friends. So it just takes that thinking beyond the envelope, that leadership or that imagination, in order to put creative talents together, because we are all aching to express ourselves live. And there is, and there will be a way, and there could be a way one-on-one, okay? And I think that it would be incredibly emotional to just show up at somebody's house and to play a duet, maybe from outside the house or from inside the house or from the garden, for that one person. Is it going to be different that the audience is 1 versus 1,000? The only reason why the audience needs to be 1,000 is money, is because the model works like that.
Right.
But if we partner with a different model, whereby we don't need 1,000 people for whatever number of time we cannot fit them in, but we can go one-on-one. This is a very powerful tool, because Doreen, when I've heard you play, I remember I was once there, and I was there with my wife, and we were the only 2 people in the audience for a while. And that was so emotional, because you were playing for us. No, really. I mean, it probably was 2 minutes long, okay? Because so many people want to hear you. But for 2 minutes, you played for my wife and I. And that I will never forget. So the issue, and that's why we need you as partners, is because you imagine things differently than a symphony orchestra. And you can help us more than we can help you, in a way to think beyond this kind of very square world. So I'm going to pick your brain in this session and ask you to imagine in what way we can help, we, the LPO, 67 musicians of the LPO, how can we help Aurora Nealand, let's say in October or in September or in November? How could we help you get out of this tremendously difficult situation of not being able to express?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. I'm not quite sure about the individual question of how you can help me, other than like helping in the larger sense. I mean, when I hear you talk, Carlos, I think about composers that are doing interesting things with the structure of the orchestra, that are relating to the land, right? So for me, like, I think it has been a dream of mine to see the LPO do something like John Luther Adams' Becoming Ocean, or these kind of pieces that are very site specific, and that are kind of, I think what we can offer as improvisers are tools that many LPO players already have as these incredible technicians and these incredible musicians. I think the thing that can be done in a large scale is to improvise with the structure of, even if the individuals are not improvising with the structure of what an orchestra does. So I can imagine, even with these restrictions of distance and space and finances, for myself, I imagine like this is such a unique time to sort of let the system of the orchestra reverberate out of the concert hall, in a way that's possible. So maybe it's a piece that starts in the concert hall in a surround sound, as Dave was saying, and as you go out, there's musicians that are playing on the street that are like reverberations of this piece. Or maybe it is maybe it is even a very traditional piece. It's a Mozart piece, but you're hearing it in a different context. So the audience is not packed into one space, but is moving through the city and hearing pieces. So it's a guided walk, and you're hearing pieces, and that is something that I think, from also having played on the street and having busked for a while, like you always hear pieces of what the busker a block away is doing when you stop, right? And so or you hear the calliope playing, or you hear this thing that is calling, tap dancers that are over here or drummers that are over there. And so, I mean, for me, the question of like, how can you help Aurora Nealand is like, for me, I feel like you can help me by like really having these conversations about how we can reimagine your role as one of man's finest inventions, the orchestra. Yeah, kind of thinking, if you're really wanting to like connect to this place and this time, then looking at the limitations that this place and this time are giving us and like recontextualizing some of the amazing things that you're already doing.
I actually wrote down several things you said, because whether you want it or not, you said a phrase that was, to me, is like, it is very powerful, which is let the system of the orchestra reverberate out of the concert hall.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a phrase or something that you already had shaped in your mind, but this expression is, to me, is a very, very powerful expression.
Sure.
So you guys are so used to expressing yourselves freely outdoors or indoors and freely that we need to learn from you. And this is why I'm very, very honestly saying that the first thing I'm going to start doing when I'm back in New Orleans is putting together a support system of musicians where you will be included.
That would be amazing.
And that, you know, whatever we're gonna call it, we're gonna call it. But the LPO will not be 67 musicians and one administration and its audience. It will be, and this is kind of, I mean, to me, is the dream, is it will be the system by which we can allow New Orleans to reverberate through the LPO. Maybe outside the hall, maybe inside the hall, maybe a combination. But we cannot think this torture has to be a huge opportunity to shape things in a completely different way. And you know, we kind of, the two worlds, the world of jazz or improvisation and the world of classical music, I've always heard them as like mutually admiring each other. When I first worked with Doreen, I was speechless, and she seemed to also be admiring the orchestra. And you know, the truth is that, but we were like two people from kind of two different wavelengths coming together and trying to connect, and we did connect. But wouldn't it be cool if we just connected de facto, and just immediately, the way that you bring it on immediately, we need to be able to do that. That's why it is so important for me, this idea of liberating the orchestra from its confines of classical music and from its confines of space and of time. Today, and this is not boasting, it's just a coincidence, I had a podcast that I do once a week, and the person I interviewed was Yo-Yo Ma. And Yo-Yo is going through the roof because he is somebody who has hundreds of concerts around the world, yet he is confined to his home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And our topic of conversation was very similar to the one we are having here. Is suddenly Yo-Yo figured out that Ennio Morricone is a very worthwhile composer, that Pachelbel's canon should be played outside of the context of a wedding, that playing the Albinoni Adagio for a sick person on the internet can be incredibly powerful. Yet we go on through our lives without realizing all of this. So I'd like to ask Dave, because you are somebody who grew up inside the world of orchestral music. Your dad is dad was a sacred person of orchestral music in the United States. Your dad worked with some of the most incredible conductors, probably met the most incredible composers, worked with the most amazing soloists. Yet you, Dave, you are just as talented.
Oh, well,
Yet, you are in New Orleans and you are a very different musician from your dad. So how can we take your 50%, which is the 50% of a great orchestral musician, and the other 50%, and make it part of the orchestra? How would you do that?
Wow. It would be a challenge in some ways, but I've seen it over the years, different ways to approach it. And, Frank Proto, who is actually one of my bass teachers, but also a great composer. But he writes pieces that include a lot of jazz elements, and it's not restricted to it, and it's not going to be something that you have to follow. But the art of improvisation is there's no rules. Is one thing, but a lot of people, like if I do what I call free jazz, for instance, then we make it up. I've done that. I did that with a number of people over the years, and that's my favorite, because you make up what you're feeling and you present it. But when you have a full orchestra, it's a little bit more difficult. So you have to have different ways, and you guys have heard many composers have done this, where there might be a written out pattern and you play it whatever way you want to do it. Or there might be a restricted thing, or there might not be, where, okay, right here, everyone's going to hold this chord and somebody can improvise over it. That's kind of what I would like to do. And I've seen it happen with Frank Cook. I mean, I was very lucky. My dad, fantastic musician, bass trombone, Cleveland Orchestra for years growing up. But the reason I'm different is because my dad was into all kinds of music. I mean, he played in the orchestra, but he also loved jazz. And it's kind of cool, when he was in college, he went to Eastman, and one of his closest friends there was Ron Carter, who was also in school with him. And they were friends the rest of my dad's life. And so when I was very young, he had, a lot of Ron Carter stuff with Eric Dolphy and some other people like that. So I was around that all the time. And, my dad would be practicing all the time and this and that, but when he didn't practice, he put some other kind of music in. And I was sort of thrown into it, by accident. There's, ways I got into playing jazz was unschooled, other than listening. And later I had to study it, but the thing with improvisation is anybody is capable of doing it. I think that's what I would like to do. And I've heard other composers do it, where it's up to the musicians and how they're going to present something. And it's, it's sort of like improvising over changes. Like if, there's so many great tunes I love to play, all genres of jazz, it could be funk, it could be some cool Miles Davis stuff, or it could be some bebop. And, but there's sort of a chord changes that are there, and you can alter those, and you can get weird with them. I was also very lucky. I studied with Jaco Stories, and he was always saying, like if you're playing and you mess up the changes, do the same mistake the second time, and then the third time, and they're going to think you're a genius. And so it's sort of a fearless kind of thing and freedom to express. I tell my students on classical bass to check out jazz, to check out funk, some other great bass players out there now, but also to, like, if you warm up and you do slow warm-ups and scales and all that, and then you're going to get ready to practice something, to improvise with your instrument, whatever style you want to do. Like if you're going to work on Shostakovich piece or something like that, improvise something in Shostakovich style, things like that. I think it's that a lot of classical musicians have a pretty strict way of approaching, playing. And the exception there is Yo-Yo Ma. He got together with Edgar Meyer, and Edgar's another hero of mine. And he improvised all the time. A lot of stuff that he comes up with, just an incredible thing. So I would like to see. I'm sure both of you would write wonderful pieces that could include some improvisation for us to play, sections, something like that. What are your thoughts about putting that into a piece for us?
I'd like to ask Doreen, because this question of Dave, I want to deflect it your way. One of the most memorable, and I've been in New Orleans. I've been with the LPO. I signed my contract 1 week before Hurricane Katrina. And I've done all kinds of concerts with the orchestra, and I've seen the orchestra happy. Yet if I have to say one moment where I have seen more smiles in the orchestra than I have ever seen before, it's when we did the HNOC concert with you, when you were improvising. I looked around the audience and I looked around the orchestra, and there were so many smiles that I just, to me, it seems that the way you play is a smile. Okay, so if you were able to make us smile inside St. Louis Cathedral, you can make us smile anywhere. So this invitation that Dave is making, I am absolutely making it again to you. And rather than having Doreen join the LPO, what I would like to have is the LPO join Doreen. Because, and that's why I'm asking so many people whether they know how to improvise or whether they know how to follow, is because if we just let you do your thing and learn from you, and we do our best, magic could happen. I don't know if you write music officially, but to me, you're writing it in the moment. So, it may be crazy, but would you accept something like an invitation, open invitation to jam with the LPO and see, and just see what happens? See who can follow you and see who can just join you by smiling. Would you accept such a thing? Or do we have to structure everything and find arrangements, etc.?
I write, but I don't write for orchestra. But I have it in my head. Even when we were doing when we were preparing for the performance that we did, 2 years ago, when Blue was writing it, he had me to come and listen to it to see if I liked it. And, the first draft, there were just certain things that just didn't work for me at all. Just because I didn't feel as though it was in the spirit of the piece. And there were some things that needed to be in there that weren't. And I expressed that, and he did it. He understood. He straight understood. Now he's a jazz guy too. He's a doubler, but he understood exactly what I was talking about. And we could have overthunk the whole thing, and it could have been something planned and still beautiful. But there was no part for me, there was no written part for me, but there was a written part for everybody else, and I needed to play with them. And it wasn't, it's sort of like after a long day's work, when you finally get out of the tub and you lie in your bed, it was just so natural, and I was really excited and everything, and all I wanted to do was just belt it out. I didn't want to say, oh, don't try that, because that might not work. I mean, personally, I can't even listen to it because I know all of the mistakes, but at the same time, people, they're just mesmerized by it, and I can understand it, because for me it was epic. I mean, not at the time as it is now, but it was just one of those things where you're in a foreign country and you think nobody's going to understand anything you say. And maybe some people don't, but when you play or when you speak with your hands, or, you start, talking, and your emotions, you smile, or you're angry, people understand that, and people can relate to that. And so for me, I got a bunch of things in my head, even from that moment, that I would love to do with the orchestra that did involve improvisation, variations, because we all do it. You say you don't know how to improvise, but you actually do. You're improvising right now. You know what I'm saying? And when you sure improvised on that cadenza, because I didn't know what I was doing. But it's just variations on a theme, basically. And the more you do it, the better the better you get at it, and the more comfortable you feel with it. And I didn't learn improvisation like in school and stuff. I'm still learning improvisation. My ears do it much faster than my head. I mean, I know what a C chord is, and a C dominant 7 chord is, and I know when I see C7 what to play, but it goes through a whole lot of phases before I actually get those notes out. But when my ear hears it coming, and my ear says, "Oh man, play this, play this, play this. Oh, play this," and that's just from experience. So, yeah, I think I could have the whole orchestra, just me playing something, they're playing something, and us playing something together, and it all becoming this wonderful, fantastic thing that by the end people are like, "Oh my God," and that's just something that came up even back then. There's so many, there's a lot of things in my head, that I'd love to share, and love to do with the orchestra. It'd be like a brand new Christmas toy. Wow, sure. Let's do it.
And what about you, Aurora? I mean, what if I would tell you right now, you have absolutely at your disposal the LPO, okay? And I've already written down Becoming Ocean as something to consider. But just say, okay, here you have the LPO, and do whatever you want. What would you do?
Cat?
First I would scream. like when
Good.
you win the sweepstakes, and then I mean it's an incredible resource. I would probably have to go away and think about it for a while. I think there's for me, it like where we are right now, I really think about like what is the capital of an orchestra, and that for me, there's a piece of it that's like when we listen to music, and particularly I think orchestral music, there's a piece of it that it's allowing us to experience, to create a space that is detached from a time that is detached from like the circles that go in our brain. It creates, that has the ability to create like a really beautiful meditative and together space that can like bring you outside of yourself. So the short answer is like I mean I would jump at an opportunity to work with an orchestra. How to like fit in the pieces of improvisation. I think there's really beautiful things about structure. So I would want to. I mean, that's the beauty of composition, right? Is like we're agreeing to be like we're going to play kind of a texture, or we're going to. For me, I really think about music is it's a very simple thing. It's sound organized in time, right? So it's just kind of giving ourselves some limitations of how we're going to organize that sound for how we're going to organize that time for different kinds of sound to fit in there. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be an incredible opportunity to be able to play with the LPO or work with the LPO. I think it's such an interesting time right now. Again, I said earlier to think about like what is the function that you all are interested in? How are you interested in functioning? And this is a strange opportunity, as challenging as hard as it is to think about what the function of the orchestra is in contemporary society, and if that wants to shift. Is it, I mean, I'm someone that very much believes music is a form of activism. So how can you create this incredible instrument that is an orchestral unit to be active in what is happening in this contemporary moment? In terms of improvisation, I completely agree that I mean, for me, I feel like improvisation is everyone's birthright. It's just like singing. Singing is everyone's birthright. Everyone has they were born with the instrument. You were born with the instrument to improvise. And it's, for me, the path of being comfortable with improvisation has been almost it's through letting go more than training. And I guess it's through training to let go, I would say. It's been a path that has been really about exploration and playing, in the actual sense of the word play. And for me, when I teach any instrument or composition, I really try to encourage a student to be like, okay, now like this is what's on the page, and that's an incredibly beautiful thing. Like, can you really play with your instrument to like discover? The discovery is the piece of it that makes it interesting to me. And then you build for yourself a palette of what you have discovered. And there are there's certainly tools, like in anything. Like you practice how to be an improviser. You practice how to not try to pre-plan where a group improvisation may go, because it might not go that way. So there is something in it that is, I think, would be so fascinating to work within the structure of what the orchestra is, to work with these improvisational elements. That, again, these incredible musicians and technicians that you guys have way more breadth and palette of sound and ability on your instruments than certainly I have as a non-orchestral musician. And I think it's a matter of like giving yourself the freedom to use that without having someone, dictate exactly on the page.
So I've just made an open invitation to the three of you to actually do your thing with the LPO, and I'm going to make that happen. Okay, and this is it's think about the fact that for the first time in my own experience, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in September. And that, which is something that for maybe 99% of the world, that's life. For a classical musician, for an orchestra, that's not our operation. That's not our way of thinking. But now we have this opportunity. And just like I asked Dave, well, could you make your concerto different? I may ask Dave to write a new piece for the orchestra. I mean, if I asked you, Dave, could you write a piece that would include these two fine artists that we have, Doreen and Aurora? And, then maybe you write in a vamp and anybody else you wanted it to invite, because now is the time. I mean, you've written pieces for us that have been very successful over the last years, and I have no idea whether I need to ask you with 1 year or with 1 month or what I need to ask you, but I may have to ask you to say, hey, David, I need you to write a piece for November that includes 5 guest artists from New Orleans. Would you do that? And let them jam?
I'd love to do that, and I'd love to get together with the two of you and we collaborate. One of my favorite things that I wrote was a collaboration with another composer. It was fun, and it did include an open area for improvisation as well. So but that's definitely I would love to try to do it, and it would be a lot of fun, and I think we'd have to figure out the size and what is possibility and the venue and different things like that, just to make it welcome. But I'd love to work with both of you, come up with something, and I'd join you with some improvs as well. I think it'd be fun.
You've said so many, the three of you said so many things that I wrote down, and that are inspiring, and we, the LPO, we need to reinvent ourselves, and the success will be based on how we reinvent ourselves. But we have fertile land. I've never known how to pronounce it. Is it fertile, whatever? I still think in Spanish, but anyway.
Fertile, either way is cool.
Fertile, whatever. Yeah. But every single, one thing I do in New Orleans is I bike everywhere. And there's two things that I continually see and I'm amazed with. One is the amount of incredible smells coming out of people's kitchens, and two, the amount of music that I just cross through just from one place to another. And I bike really a lot, hours per day. So New Orleans is incredibly fertile for this kind of exploration. And don't get me wrong, we will still keep playing Mozart and Beethoven. But guess what? Mozart was the improviser, the perfect improviser. So much he didn't even have time to write down sometimes. And the same thing with Beethoven. So, and there's something Aurora said, which I liked, which is that music is the perfect I don't know, you said something like source of something about activism. Can you repeat what you said?
I think I might have said music is a form of activism. Like
Exactly. Okay.
think of it, yeah.
So one thing, and I just would like your opinion on this. This has been the months of COVID. However, for me, these months have had a bigger issue. And you know what issue that is. And that is an issue that, as an orchestra, we need to tackle directly. We cannot exclude anyone from the orchestral world, either because it's too costly or because we don't, whatever. But if what you're saying, that music is a vehicle for activism, I also would like to invite you and anyone in New Orleans who has ideas about this, is how we can allow the LPO, or how we can make the LPO more inclusive. How can we make the LPO make kids who cannot afford a cello have a cello? That's why I'm saying it's not only the vehicle for music and for improvisation and for inclusion of artists in New Orleans, but it should also be the vehicle that allows a kid anywhere in the city of New Orleans be able to buy or to have a cello if needed. And I don't know how to do this, but again, I've said this so many times now out on the internet, that what I need now is the partner or the partners that think beyond the envelope and allow the LPO to have a central role in a more inclusive and a more generous classical music scene in New Orleans. Is this something that resonates? And I'd like to ask you, Doreen. I mean, because it is important for me to tell you, one of the first thing that struck me, I'm from Mexico, a place where ticket sales in average are anywhere between $5 and $15. They could be more if New York Philharmonic comes, but if I play, it's anywhere between 5 and 15 or 20, which means that I have a different task in order to attract all kinds of audiences. But in New Orleans, I've had a hard time. I've had a hard time making the LPO a really inclusive vehicle of communication. And I think there's a huge task there. Do you agree with me, Doreen?
Yeah. I mean, classical music is like okra, it's wonderful, but you either like it or you don't even want to try and like it because, the way it looks or, something like that. So, yeah, you find some way to make yourself attractive to all, then yeah, you got something for sure. I mean, sometimes it's just, a theme or something, or what you wear, or where you're playing, and you can grab a whole bunch of new people that didn't even know they liked it. I mean, people tell me all the time, they say, I didn't like no clarinet. I didn't even know a clarinet could sound like that, but now I love clarinet. I love what you do, and that was just because I found some kind of way to reach him, and you can do that. I mean, I just know you definitely can. I mean, classical music is one of those wonderful gifts, that lots of people take for granted, and some people don't even allow themselves to get introduced to. But it's an absolutely wonderful thing. Absolutely wonderful thing. So, yeah, all you have to do is find a way to approach, and you'll have people eating out of the palm of your hand.
Yep.
We are kind of already ran out of time, but I have to say that this has been one of the most fascinating exchanges we've had, because you may not notice it, but you are incredibly inspiring to me, the three of you, because of what you've done in the past, but most importantly, because of what you will do in the future. We are only scratching the surface of what we can do if we band together, and if we break down the barriers between classical music and everything else. You know, I think I've said this maybe to you, Dave, but I'm one of my favorite comments of Duke Ellington was when he was asked, you know, whether whether this kind of music was better than this, or whether this music was bad or good. He said, there's only two kinds of music. There's good music, and then there's everything else. Okay, so there's just so many people within our audience who would be thrilled if we broke down the barriers, even the spoken barriers between the orchestra and the audience. We've never had, I'm just giving you one very simple example. We've never had a spontaneous member of the orchestra addressing the audience between movements of a symphony, spontaneously. Yet, I think that would be one of the most liberating things ever to be experienced on stage. As a conductor, if anybody in the orchestra would stand up between movements and tell the orchestra and tell the audience something like, well, the following movement is the reason why I became a professional musician, that to me would make that concert memorable already. Those kind of interactions that happen naturally in some kinds of music. In classical music, they're supposed to be off limits. We have to choreograph everything. And I think there's a good time. Now is a good time to change some of this. I want to share with you some of the comments because they have to do with you. Eva Liebhaber, who is in Costa Rica and who's a fabulous violinist, she says, the potential of all these ideas is incredible. Can't wait for it to materialize. Val Gross, fabulous violist. Love the expression, classical music is like okra. Bob Gross, personally,
That's great.
Bob Gross, personally, I love the ideas being discussed here. If there was ever a time to explore this, now is time. Carpe diem. Kathy Anderson, sound familiar? How about improvisation challenge live? Well, Kathy, that's been a challenge of mine for a long time. When I first came to New Orleans, I thought, maybe innocent of me, that everyone in the orchestra was able to improvise. And I found out that it wasn't exactly like that. Patty Adams, fabulous flutist and incredible lady. 4 rock stars. Well, thank you. Eva, yay, Aurora, hearts. Eva, Doreen rocks. And greetings to all from Costa Rica. Angela Haber, or yeah, I imagine it's Haber. Hi, Dave. You gave a few bass lessons years ago. Hope that you and family are well, etc., etc. So many people who correspond with you. I could keep asking you questions forever, believe me. But I'm sure that I've gone way over the time. And I would like to ask you, starting with Aurora, then Doreen, and then David, to just say something in the matter of saying goodbye, or whatever you want to say that we haven't touched upon. Aurora, you start.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I think it's very exciting that y'all are having these conversations, and I feel incredibly lucky to even be included in this circle of people. Um, I, 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 I feel like a lot of what you all are talking about is um, probably conversations that you have been having in the orchestral world for a while of like how do we make this music accessible, or how do we bring what is going on outside of the concert hall into the concert hall, or now rather how do we bring what is in the concert hall outside to the concert hall, and adapt to these times. And that is really exciting that you're having these conversations, and I really applaud y'all for doing that as someone that is a huge fan of orchestral music and chamber music and the LPO in specific. I think to your kind of what you were talking about, Carlos, and I'll try to be short about this. I think there's a piece of it. It's a very complex issue, right? But there's a piece of this that is about access, like who has the access to hear y'all and who doesn't, and how are we able to play with that flexibility. And a piece of it also is like, as you all, how do you have the access to be able to afford to play the music that you're playing and be living artists, right? So I think there's an interesting chance to sort of like envision some restructuring, which I'm sure are, again, much deeper conversations than I'm mentioning. But like, I think about in a what if world, like what if a chamber group from the LPO was partnering with a social aid and pleasure club and played, at the beginning of a Mother's Day second line, or played at one of the bars, or the LP, a small group from the chamber, a piece of the LPO was at one of the bar stops that a second line is making. That kind of thinking is really interesting to me, in terms of like the access to how you tie the orchestra into this place, which is so rich in a musical history and a cultural history, and that access, I think that the repertoire, the classical music repertoire, if we're talking a very traditional way, it has something for everyone. It's just not, everyone is not able to experience it always in a live music setting. So what are the ways of being able to bring that access outside, whether it's like the percussion section gets set up in a U-Haul truck, and the U-Haul truck drives and the string players drive themselves, but or like if you need certain acoustics for something, how do you have movable acoustics? I don't know. I think I applaud you all for having the conversations. I think there's obviously like many pieces to the puzzle of like, how do we get you funding? And maybe a piece of that is that some of this large tourism money that the convention center is bringing in, or a hotel is bringing in, there's a hotel that is sponsoring your series of appearing at different second line stops, or I don't know. I think there's a lot there, and I applaud you for having the conversation, and I am happy to be here as a sounding board or a resource for that, because I think that the music of an orchestra is extremely powerful and necessary.
Thank you. Doreen.
Well, I want to thank you for including me in this conversation. I want to thank you for, the respect, and, thank you for my new toy. I'm really looking forward to, doing, opening my mind with this orchestra thing. I mean, it's kind of weird because, I had all these great visions of what we could do together, and now you're like just handing it to me, and I'm really excited about it. And as far as the okra thing, okra is one of my favorite foods, and just to give you an example, You know, there's some people who look at an okra and say, who eats that? I would never touch that ever, you know, especially, you know, like the slime or whatever. But, you know, if we were doing something, a concert, and I called the tune okra, and then we took a break in the middle at intermission, and like I made smothered okra or okra this, that, and the other, you know, you try it. You doggone right, you try it, and you probably love it too. I mean, some people, you know, that you try it and be like, no, I still don't like it. But they tried it. You know what I'm saying? And there's a way, you know. Sometimes you can just put ketchup on something. That wouldn't work, but you know what I'm saying, right? But anyway, I just I am so touched, you know. First, you know, even when they asked me to do this thing, you know, I was like, I don't know, you know. And then they said, Carlos, I'm like, okay. You know, so I'm inspired and very, very grateful, very blessed. And, you know, just to be included is an absolutely fabulous gift. And I appreciate it. And I promise you that there'll be a lot of smiles and a whole lot of laughing. And we'll all have a great time because, you know, that's how I came up. I came up classical, and I was lucky enough and patient enough and, you know, with support system to, you know, tip my feet into some jazz waters and actually fall in love with it and, you know, find a voice in it. And I love teaching that and showing people with the same kind of background how they could do it too. So I'm going to be dreaming about this tonight. So I'm just loaded with thanks and appreciation and admiration and, you know, and even to the people who are listening and commenting. Yeah, y'all rock too. Let's do this. Yeah.
So Doreen, I actually, both of your comments are so motivating. And there's a comment right now of somebody very close to you, Dave. Is there a tune called Smothered Okra? Well, I'm not sure there's a tune called Smothered Okra, but since
Not yet.
this exactly,
Not yet.
since
That's
this
we'll write it.
exactly. So since this question came actually from inside your home, Dave, I think that maybe, if I may, I'm going to commission a piece from you, okay, which will include these two fabulous ladies and needs to have the following name: Smothered Okra.
That's
Okay.
a great name for a tune, man. And
Okay, so Smothered Okra for LPO, Aurora and Doreen. So now it's your turn for your goodbye, David. Dave.
Well, that's great. I wonder if you guys. I mean, I love to improvise in the kitchen too. You know,
Yeah.
and yep. Sometimes it's really good. Other times, well, never again. But man, it's been a pleasure to do this. It's great hearing all of you and what you're all thinking about, and I'd love to help however I can. And you know, improvisation, I would love to see several things. One would be where the orchestra really would have to improvise, and we'll talk about that and see what needs to be done. The other thing is talking about getting young kids to play instruments, to be able to afford them. And I know there are some programs out there. I think the LPO would be great if we're involved more in depth, you know, and just to name two, like for instance, Youth Orchestra, we do some stuff with them. but maybe more active in a way, and having it part of our job. And then a requirement for the kids who are in the youth orchestra, especially even the very young ones, to be able to get in free or be required maybe to come hear certain concerts that we do. Same with Noka. My son went to Noka, he plays cello. He's a great cellist, but he also plays jazz guitar. And so he was doing in youth orchestra and studying classical, and then going to Noka for jazz and stuff like that. And that was the thing that I loved the most about New Orleans was a strong feeling about mixing the two genres, classical technique with creative improvisation in jazz. And it really, Ellis was so strong about that, and just him talking about it and then hearing stories about all kinds of students who would, he would force them to do that. And it'd be great for us to do it in a reverse way too, in some ways. Hopefully getting, I know there's some programs out there to get kids who can't afford instruments to be able to get them. I think that would be wonderful. And I'm sure there's going to be ways. I know a few of them are pretty active, and for us to interact with it and really make it a big part of it would be great. So, but I thank you guys very much. It's really fun, incredible ideas that you guys have. And I look forward to doing some work with you and improvising, and man, we'll smother some okra.
I will read one comment from a good friend, Monica Miller, that she just says, that's going to be fantastic. And I want to leave you with that, sometimes when one is in the middle of the dark moment or the tunnel, the hardest thing is to, say, okay, will we make it? And I want to share with you that that's not, to me, the issue. The issue is that we have to imagine together, when we're out of the tunnel, because we will be, how do we want this to be? And you have provided ideas, depth, imagination to something that could really change the face of classical music in New Orleans. Because New Orleans cannot keep going without making a huge impact in the world of classical music. Just like New Orleans is the hotbed of so many different kinds of things, bands and musicians such as you, we need to include classical music into that excitement, into that creativity, into that. And so my search, and I always say, is for the partners who can have the generosity and who can have the ability to make the LPO more generous and more inclusive in every sense of the word. I thank the three of you, and I thank all of you who participated in this live on Facebook. It's happy hour. I don't remember whether we have one next week. Alfred Lemon will be participating, I believe, on the 9th of July, and that's going to be one to remember. I think we do have one next week, so please remind me who is, because maybe then I can announce, and I have forgotten who is well, it doesn't really matter. Oh, Alfred will be next week. Okay. Alfred from, oh my goodness, you don't want to miss this. The hard thing with Alfred will be actually, how will I make it stop? You know, if we just went 90 minutes, Alfred can speak 90 minutes nonstop. But it's all interested, and he is, I call him Wiki Alfred. He's a walking encyclopedia of New Orleans history and New Orleans everything. So don't miss that. Thank you very much to all of you, and I'll see you next week. And I am dying to hug you in person as soon as possible. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Carlos.
Bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye, Aurora.
Bye.
Y'all.
Bye.